Says that he reviewed thousands of documents as part of this investigation, and the AG uncovered copious evidence of possible financial fraud. That's a quote there. But the Trump's lawyers say that they will appeal. So what happens next?
Well, they will appeal. As I tell my students, losers get to appeal, and they lost. That doesn't mean that there's any real merit to an appeal. The judge's opinion is brief, but it's extremely succinctly and well written. It's essentially ticks through Donald Trump and his children's arguments like spaghetti thrown against a wall, which is what they read like. He argued things like, well, there might be criminal liability, so I shouldn't have to sit for a civil deposition. The judge said, listen, your other son Eric invoked the Fifth Amendment 500 times during his testimony. You can do that like any other witness. I think he can appeal, but ultimately he's going to have to testify, and then he will presumably, potentially, I should say, invoke the Fifth, which he has shown contempt for when it came to some of his political foes when he was president.
Well, let's assume that what happens, what you said, that he takes the Fifth, that he appeals, and then he has to take the Fifth. But I just want to remind our audience what the former president says about that move. Here it is.
The mob takes the Fifth. If you're innocent, why are you taking the Fifth Amendment? When you have your staff taking the Fifth Amendment, taking the Fifth so they're not prosecuted, when you have the man that set up the illegal server taking the Fifth, I think it's disgraceful. Have you seen what's going on in front of Congress? Fifth Amendment, Fifth Amendment, Fifth Amendment. Horrible. Horrible.
Horrible and disgraceful, and I wonder if he thinks it's 500 times that, since his son, Eric, did it 500 times at least in his deposition. Hypocrisy aside, though, Kim, if Trump takes the Fifth, can't that be used against him in a civil case or in civil cases?
Right. It can be used. That is, you can tell the jury that he took the Fifth and allow the jury to basically take whatever it wants, make whatever conclusions, draw conclusions from that. That is, that he's hiding something. And, it's all of our constitutional right is perfectly fine. But this is, just so viewers understand, a civil case, all that can happen from a civil case is money damages or an injunction. So it would be paying back, say, New York State for not paying enough taxes, for example, or being forced to do something or not to do something. That's really different from the criminal context, which of course can put someone in jail. And so one of their primary arguments was, well, the New York or the Manhattan DA is at the same time looking into criminal allegations, and this isn't fair that we'd have to speak in a civil deposition beforehand. And this is where the judge, as you indicated, said, listen, this is a legitimate investigation. There's nothing in the law that says you can't have parallel things going against you. And the fact that you might have criminal liability doesn't somehow insulate you from other ways that you could be held accountable. So honestly, Don, when you see this and you see that he made similar arguments when he was president about his accounting firm, Mazars, he lost those even with a conservative court. It does feel like this man, Donald Trump, seems to think the rules that apply to everybody else don't apply to him. And now that he's a private citizen, it's not flying. It didn't fly when he was president, at least with judges, and it's really not going to fly now that he's a private citizen.
Yeah, it's interesting because Kevin McCarthy always likes to say rules for thee, but not for me, and Donald Trump is the epitome of that. William, what about Ivanka and Don Jr.? What kind of questions do you think investigators will ask, and do you expect Trump's kids to tell the truth?
Well, obviously, Eric, pleaded the Fifth Amendment, took the Fifth Amendment 500 times. The Don Jr. and Ivanka, basically, supposedly, especially Don Jr., running the Trump organization while his father was president, and Ivanka was one time, I guess, a quote-unquote consultant to the Trump organization, obviously a big part of the organization. They know exactly what's going on, what has gone on, and so they're in a position to provide a lot of information to the New York State Attorney General if they choose to answer questions and tell the truth. that remains a big if, despite the comments from the former president about people taking the fifth. I think the important point that Kim made as well was about Mazars, the accounting firm, which this has not been a very good week for the Trumps and the Trump organization, because that accounting firm basically disowned 10 years worth of accounting reports that it had made on the Trump organization, which could potentially open up the Trump organization to additional lawsuits from lenders who theoretically relied on those accounting statements to make loans to the Trump organization. So this is not a good week because of those two things. You combine that with the Manhattan District Attorney's ongoing criminal investigation, and that grand jury has been meeting since mid last year. Something's got to give there, and soon. Things are tightening around Trump Tower, and they should be nervous. And as I said, this is an important day and a very good day for American justice system.
William, Kim, thank you both.